Republican leaders in Congress are feeling a lot of pressure tonight as serious concerns are growing about big health insurance premium hikes next year. Prices, many in the party say, have spiraled because of the Obamacare. Well, a few GOP senators are breaking with leadership there in the Senate, saying families simply cannot afford to take another hit. And then over in the House, there are some anxious Republicans who are pushing their own proposals, as that chamber is now expected to take up the health care issue next week. Well, joining me now with a broader perspective of all of this is Washington Stand reporter Casey Harper, who's been following today's stories. Casey, let's start with this one. What are Republicans pushing for with health care? And I guess a bigger question for me is there any realistic fix that's on the table right now?
Well, thanks, Jody. That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? But the concern for Republicans, to your question, is straightforward. Families are staring down higher bills once again, and many in the party say that the current system is part of the problem. Now, a handful of GOP senators voted to advance a temporary subsidy extension, not because they support Obamacare, but because they don't want to get people to get blindsided in January. Now, here's what President Trump said after the Senate rejected the dueling health care bills yesterday.
And I really believe we can work on health care together and come up with something that's going to be much better, much less expensive for the people, less expensive for our nation, but really most importantly, better and less expensive for the people.
Now, in the House, several Republicans from competitive districts have signed petitions aimed at forcing a vote to keep some form of help in place. House leaders who have been hesitant are now expected to bring the issue forward next week as pressure grows to take action. For now, Republicans are trying to balance short-term relief with tackling what they see as the real drivers of rising costs, Jody.
A huge issue, and it's going to be very interesting to see how that begins to unfold further next week. And Casey, another issue I think that's kind of to some extent getting lost in all the dust of the healthcare issue is the redistricting battle. That has been a major issue on the front line of the news for quite some time, and we all saw what happened in Indiana the other day. Is there any risk, Casey, of Indiana Republicans maybe losing ground now in next year's midterms, you think?
Yeah, Jody. I mean, in Indiana, the Republican-led Senate rejected a new congressional map that would have strengthened GOP control in next year's House elections. So that vote was 31-19, with 21 Republicans notably joining all 10 Democrats against the plan, which was really dealt a rare rebuke to President Trump. Here's what House Speaker Mike Johnson said about that vote.
As I've said all along, whatever the maps are that are presented by every state, I have to win those, and we will. So I guess that's a disappointing outcome in Indiana, but there's about 14 states at some stage of the process now, either litigation or redistricting, so we shall see.
Now, that failed map, passed last week by the state House, could have given Republicans all 9 U.S. House seats and would have split Indianapolis. President Trump expressed disappointment, saying it could have added 2 Republican seats, but he did kind of downplay his role in the fight. Now, this vote is part of a nationwide fight, as you know, Jody, over redistricting, as both parties maneuver for control of Congress ahead of next year's midterms.
Well, before I let you go, Casey, also there's big news internationally. We all saw the U.S. military grab, if you will, a Venezuelan oil tanker this week, which has really turned up pressure on that country's government. Do we know the latest? What's happening now with this whole drug war situation?
Yes, Jody. So that tanker you mentioned was seized by the U.S., is reportedly headed to Houston now, and it's carrying nearly 1.85 million barrels of Venezuelan heavy crude. Now, the ship is actually too large to dock, so its cargo will be offloaded to smaller vessels. And U.S. officials say the seizure is fully legal and part of ongoing sanctions and the war on drugs, aimed at cutting off revenue to President Nicolas Maduro's regime, which has long been at odds with President Trump. Naturally, Venezuela calls it theft, but Washington warns more tankers could be targeted as it continues efforts to pressure Maduro and do what they say is supporting freedom in the region, Jody.
Wow, so much going on. Casey, as always, thank you so much for keeping us abreast on the highlights of what's going on. We appreciate it.